Respected Vice Chancellor, Registrar of the Odisha State Open University, my colleagues in this room where we are making this lecture online, Dr. Shekhar and colleagues, and all the distinguished audience who have connected to this program. We just heard a very encouraging speech by the Honorable Rajyapal. I congratulate the entire university and their staff on this occasion of the Foundation Day. I wish the university all success in their endeavors. I also thank them for inviting NIMHANS to be working with them on this psychosocial disaster, psychosocial distress relief or mitigation activity during this COVID period. I want to place on record that NIMHANS has been working with Odisha even earlier when we worked for the cyclone in Orissa, and of course subsequently several training programs for mental health personnel has happened from NIMHANS. I must place on record my appreciation to all the departments of the Odisha government for making this possible. We will assure all our cooperation, not just in this COVID period and in the days to come, our support to facilitate the best mental health service in Odisha. With these few words of introduction, I also thank the organizers for inviting me to give this Foundation Day lecture. I hope to keep my time and wind up this lecture at the earliest so that your other activities can go on. The lecture's title is Yoga Well-Being, and I added a component of neuroprotection to emphasize the research that we have done at NIMHANS. Yoga, as we all know, received a big jump ever since the United Nations made it an official activity, declaring the International Day of Yoga 21st June. Thanks to the Honorable Prime Minister who introduced this topic in his first UN lecture, following which there was no looking back. Year after year, since 2015, we have been observing the International Day of Yoga, and it is gathering more and more momentum. All countries participating into this. We recently saw a viral video of a very senior cardiologist from Italy who was on ventilator who had to be on a ventilator, but before that he went on to practice pranayama while he was going through the COVID treatment and got out of it. So it looks like at all stages yoga has played an important role, and here we are trying to learn as part of this lecture some facets of yoga which I want to introduce to all of you here. I'm hurried there. Okay. Well-being is a state of mind. Well-being is a feeling that we have to always relish keeping our health in sound state. In fact, the World Health Organization defining mental health ensures that health without mental health is incomplete. So a total health means mental health and mind being in a state of well-being. And this is precisely what yoga reiterates and has been saying ever since yoga was introduced to the world. As many as the Ramayana years backwards to the latest years, mind is an issue which crops up in all definitions of yoga. Yoga Chitta Vritti Nirodha, among the latest of them, Patanjali, who gave us all the yoga principles, went on to say, you control the oscillations of your mind through yoga, and yoga helps to do that. So here we are very appropriately using yoga for purposes of well-being, and the manualization of yoga happened by sage Patanjali, who gave the 8 limbs of yoga, starting from yama, niyama, asana, pranayama, and so on. However, while all these limbs are essential for practice of yoga, most of the situation in the world for practical application, they refer to yoga as a set of yogasanas, postures. And some also add pranayama. Although meditation, the dhyana, dharana, and samadhi become very important, meditation has cut a separate niche for itself in the yoga practices. However, many yoga practitioners emphasize being mindful during yogasana practices can be very helpful. In other words, in an indirect way, the meditation gets into this cycle of yoga, pranayama, asana and pranayama, and meditation becomes an inseparable part of it. So here we are at NIMHANS using yogasana and pranayama, and in some parts of meditation as well, for treating a lot of patients with psychiatric and neurological illnesses. And this tradition has been there much earlier, but more formalized in the last decade and a half. And most recently, we have made an academic department which has yoga and Ayurveda together as integrative medicine in mental health and neurosciences. So here we are applying yogasana, pranayama into improving the well-being. I'll illustrate what I have said, that it happens with some examples. I'm going to take 2 examples to illustrate this promotion of well-being and some elements of neuroprotection using some work which we have done with elderly population and those who have a depressed disorders. 2 different categories of people in whom we have been able to demonstrate. For example, we looked at elderly people who need to have most well-being situation, as getting older invites a lot of physical and mental illnesses. Practicing yoga in this group of individuals facilitates their sleep to get better. And those who were doing yoga had a lower sleep disturbance scores compared to those who were on wait list category. We also looked at cognitive functions in people with elderly individuals, and we know this has been replicated by other studies as well. People who practiced yoga had a substantial improvement in their cognitive function, but that did not happen in those people who did not practice yoga and were waitlisted. Well-being reflects in quality of life, and people who practiced yoga reported better quality of life than those who did not practice yoga. And in fact, for various reasons, they went on to say that their quality of life has been coming down. So together, yoga has had significant positive effects in otherwise healthy elderly individuals who lived in their old age homes. We also looked at depression. Depression is one other ubiquitous disease, quite prevalent, and we know it pulls down an individual's morale. And this depression as an illness also reduces productivity in the community. And so it is very important that we look at yoga in its therapeutic role in depression as well. So we examined this. There are, of course, several reviews that have occurred in this area. One of the Cochrane review or meta-analysis says yoga has a significant benefit in depressed individual compared to no yoga, compared to other usual treatments, or compared to physical exercise, and compared to even psychotherapeutic interventions. So yoga has a substantial role as an antidepressant in individuals with depression. This has been established, and most recently we also found that yoga reduces scores of depression in the individual. I do not want the audience to interpret this graph as a suggestion that yoga is actually better than antidepressant drug. That is not the intention. This was not a randomized trial, so that interpretation may best be avoided. I'm just illustrating that yoga brings down depression scores substantially. The lowest graph indicates that, lowest line indicates that the depression scores came down in yoga practicing individuals. It is not just that yoga gets symptoms better, it also perhaps corrects some biological abnormalities in depression. One of the things that we were able to demonstrate is in depression, or yoga otherwise enhances the GABAergic tone in a given individual. And we were able to demonstrate that even in healthy individuals, the GABA tone, the flat line is a measure which suggests that the length of cortical inhibition reflects the GABA tone. Following a 2-week practice of yoga, although they practiced more than 2 weeks, because we tested them at 1 month apart, the healthy individuals also showed a substantial lengthening of the silence period, indicating increased GABAergic tone. And in depression, interestingly, GABAergic tone is lower. I want you to look at this graph. At one end, healthy individuals who have a longer suppression duration, meaning a better GABAergic tone, compared to the pink one at the other end, where depressive individuals have a much lower tone in GABA. You allocate the individuals into either walking or yoga. In yoga individuals, if you see that light blue and the dark blue graphs, the GABAergic tone went on to get better, the lengthening of the GABAergic tone. Even within a week of yoga practice, this biological effect was demonstrable. Other researchers have also directly measured GABA in the brain of individuals who practiced yoga for their treatment of depression. GABA can be measured in the brain by sophisticated magnetic resonance spectroscopy investigation. And then they found the GABAergic levels actually increased following yoga in the brains of depressed individuals. And they also found that yoga got them better with respect to their depression status. Depressed individuals have a very high levels of cortisol. And we know that stress increases cortisol, and cortisol is not a very friendly hormone in most individuals, as long as it does not sustain its level very high for a long period. Depressed individuals continue to have a very high levels of cortisol for long periods. You treat individuals with depression with yoga, more people with depression lose their high levels of cortisol to a lower level, whether you give treatment with antidepressant or without antidepressants. But you give antidepressant alone, this phenomenon was not so robust. Not many people lost the levels of cortisol. So cortisol reduction can happen following yoga in depressed individual, and people have also found that this happen in healthy subjects. Cortisol influences our brain repair. It adversely influences the brain repair. To protect the brain from all wear and tear of either stress or otherwise, our brain produces what we call as brain-derived neurotropic factor. It is a repair mechanism in the brain which is mediated by this chemical called as the brain-derived neurotropic factor. It gets out of the brain and can be measured in the blood, and in the blood of individuals with depression, it is lower than healthy individuals. You treat these depressives with antidepressants or any other treatment, the brain-derived neurotropic factor increases. And we wanted to examine whether this effect of brain-derived neurotropic factor changes in depression can be affected by yoga. You treat depressed individuals with antidepressant treatments or yoga are combined together as a group. As you can see, the blue and the next red bar, there is a small increase in the levels of the brain-derived neurotropic factor towards the levels of the healthy individual, which is the blue bar which you are seeing. You can see the other two pairs of bars on the next half of the slide, which says that before and after treatment with yoga, whether you give antidepressants or not, yoga practicing individuals have a substantial and significant elevation in this brain repair mechanism molecule, that is the BDNF in the blood. So yoga protects the brain. And as I said, cortisol, those who had losing cortisol following yoga, they obtained a much higher levels of the brain-derived neurotropic factor than those people who did not lose cortisol. In them, the yoga was not so effective. But nonetheless, I just want to demonstrate the relationship between stress, cortisol, and brain repair mechanism which are being compromised. And lastly, yoga directly influences the brain by way of altering its physiology. You chant Om. Om chanting is a part of yoga practices. You chant Om, some of the limbic cortices, some of the limbic areas of the brain become deactivated. Limbic areas of the brain are those areas which actually make us become very emotional. And by they becoming activated, there is a cascade of events which it generates, including release of cortisol and the subsequently other BDNF effects I actually demonstrated earlier. So, Om chanting deactivates limbic areas. Likewise, there could be other mechanisms which need to be looked at. Many other yoga practices which would influence this or other neurophysiological system. The point I'm trying to emphasize here, which I want you all to appreciate, is direct effects of yoga on the brain today are demonstrable. Thanks to advance of science and technology, we have many ways of looking at what our elders were saying. Yoga helps you, calms you, improves your health, improves your mental health. And we have evidence today by way of technological advances in medical sciences to demonstrate these effects of yoga. And by way of reducing the activation of the limbic structure, yoga could potentially spare some parts of the brain by getting further damaged because of the activation of the limbic structures. And we know in depression, the limbic structures are highly active. As a consequence of that, some of the cortical areas of the brain in depressed individuals have become thinner. This is demonstrated world over by many researchers. And what happens when we give yoga? This is a group of elderly individuals who practiced yoga. As you can see, that small white dot is a place called as hippocampus in the brain, which stores our memories. And this is the part of the brain which starts shrinking as we get older. my hippocampus would have been at least 20% bigger if a scan was done when I was maybe 45 years of old. In these 10-15 years, I would have lost about 20% of hippocampus in my brain itself. Most people, as we keep aging, we keep losing our hippocampus. And here are the groups of people who practiced yoga for a period of 6 months, and there is a statistical model. Scientists can examine whether the hippocampus has shrunk. Can we pick up very small reductions in hippocampus or increases in the size of the hippocampus? They practiced yoga. 6 months later, their scans were obtained. The scientists actually compared the two scans. They have found, to their surprise, in elderly individuals, instead of hippocampus shrinking, it has actually gotten bigger after 6 months in these people, 7 people who practiced yoga. I am making a cautious interpretation of this observation because we don't have a control group of people who were scanned 6 months later but who did not do yoga. We have a corollary that has been demonstrated by some other groups of workers. Here are their brains were measured for the amount of gray matter that was there in their brain. The researchers studied a large group of people. Some of them had practiced yoga for several years, and some of them, of course, many of us, had not practiced yoga. The declining line is age-dependent reductions in the gray matter in the brain, which will happen to all of us. With age, our gray matter shrinks. Imagine you have done yoga for several years, that yoga has protected these people from not shrinking. That is the horizontal line, the uninterrupted line which you see in the graph. This is a group of people whose brain did not shrink. So it looks like yoga offered protection to the brain in terms of shrinking. Another indirect indicator of aging, senescence, is what we call as telomeres. Telomeres are the terminal ends of the chromosome which shrink with age. And those who had practiced yoga had a longer telomere length. This is again demonstrated by some other researcher. Both studies, the gray matter size with chronic practice of yoga, telomere length with chronic practice of yoga, both are protected, and which again supports what we have found. 6 months of practice of yoga actually increase the hippocampus in the brains of elderly individuals. So here we are, yoga makes well-being better, quality of life gets better, sleep gets better in elderly individual, depression gets better. In depressives, cortisol levels fall, brain-derived neurotropic factor which protects the brain gets better. Even the brain size actually increases in those sensitive areas like hippocampus. Together, we have yoga as a protective mechanism. Actually, it can be an anti-senescence intervention if we are able to demonstrate it with future results, and has a good potential to prevent dementia if adequately examined. So these are all data which I shared with you about yoga, well-being, and neuroprotection. I just want to give a translational effects of yoga in clinical practice. Being a clinician using yoga in hospital practice, I also looked at whether yoga improved schizophrenia. Why did we choose schizophrenia? Schizophrenia has some very serious symptoms called as positive symptoms, the negative symptoms, and in schizophrenia individuals, the brain mechanisms, the mental mechanisms are all disconnected. Schism between thought and affect, schism between my perception and my thoughts, and it is a series of disconnections that happen between the individuals and the society. And worse, even within the brain, the two hemispheres are in a way disconnected functionally to some extent or other. And so the schizophrenia itself is called as a disorder of connectopathy. Whereas yoga, we have heard, actually connects. Yoga comes from the word yuj, which makes it the meaning connect. And so we believe, although the definition of yoga also says, it says it is a connection between my personal consciousness and the cosmic consciousness. So if it can do that, can it start the connections within the individual first, within the individual and the family, and so the schizophrenia could potentially get better with yoga. And so we went on to do this examination of role of yoga in schizophrenia. We did yoga practices which were developed for purposes of yoga in schizophrenia as a therapy. And then we found that in individuals who were chronically ill, were getting treatments, who had a lot of negative symptoms which are very resistant to medication effects, yoga practice in most people, a good number of people, more than 35% of the individuals who practiced yoga lost their negative symptoms. But this does not happen in people who merely did exercise or were waitlisted. I want you to see the tall light blue graph in the middle, which indicates many people who practiced yoga in schizophrenia lost their negative symptoms. And of course, we have been able to replicate this data, and it has been published. And one of the international guidelines was also able to accept this as a recommendation to allow yoga to be practiced in the care of schizophrenia individuals. So here we are, yoga in schizophrenia has been therapeutic. And when we do their psychological tests, we also found social cognition get better. Social cognition is a way in which I can emote with other individuals in my family, in my circles. That ability to emote with others indicates how warm this individual has been. And social cognition tests have been developed, and we found that yoga increases scores of the social cognition test. And the social cognition is damaged in schizophrenia because of low levels of oxytocin, a hormone which is lower in schizophrenia. And so people have been trying what is called as a nasal oxytocin spray to improve schizophrenia symptoms of social cognition. But we did yoga in schizophrenia individuals. We were able to demonstrate that oxytocin levels increase following yoga practice, but that did not happen in waitlisted individual. So yoga was actually endogenously increasing oxytocin levels, which in modern day as an exogenous administration that was being given as therapy. Yoga helps schizophrenia, and one of the mechanisms we believe is increasing the levels of oxytocin. And lastly, we said yoga connects. Does yoga connect various brain systems? We looked at schizophrenia individuals where some of the networks in the brain are dysfunctional. I'm not going into what those networks are. People have demonstrated what is called as the default mode network is not well connected, is poorly connected in schizophrenia. And this connection and its coherence of the connection can actually get better if you practice yoga. You can see those yellow spots that appear on the screen. Before yoga, they were poorer, and after yoga, they became brighter. The coherence get better, suggesting that yoga practice actually makes connections within the brain of some of the circuits get better. So we actually validate the term yoga to unite. So it starts uniting within my brain, my circuits, and so makes me get better from schizophrenia. And one of the patient's relative gave this testimonial to me. She said, "Doctor, you have given back my son to me." I asked her, "What do you mean by that?" She said, "He was ill for several years. We gave treatment. He got better, but he remained aloof. He was not mixing with me, would not even care. He was an engineering graduate. He wouldn't even go for a job, simply sit at home. I had to actually earn my livelihood to the family because my husband is no more. And a year ago, I had come for a follow-up. You advised me that he should undergo yoga. I started taking him to yoga. It's about now almost 8-9 months since he practiced yoga. There has been a lot of change. He started going to work. He takes me to a temple on his scooter. He brings some sweets to me. In fact, in the last birthday, he brought a sweet that I used to like a lot. The last time I got that was 3 years ago when my husband was alive. And he also brought me a sari, a color that I used to like. That only appreciation was by my husband. He started recognizing what my likes and dislikes are. He's able to emote with me. This is what I say, doctor, you have given my son back to me. So I thank you, she said. And this is precisely what yoga gets us back. And so we believe yoga has a place in health and mental health as well. And a multidisciplinary team will have to take yoga forward in this group of people, both for merely promoting well-being, which is very important, and also for purposes of therapy that yoga produces. All this work I wasn't able to conduct with a group of people who have participated in all this research. I thank them, and I thank all the audience in this program of the Foundation Day for listening to me. Once again, I thank the Honorable Vice Chancellor for inviting me for this Foundation lecture. Dhanyavad.